All right, so I'm going to spend the next, I don't know how long, just sharing a lot of our adventure that we had on our Alaska cruise this past summer. As I was compiling this, it became apparent that there was no way I was going to get the entirety of our trip captured in this. I just ran out of time. So I'm calling this the part one of this, what'll probably be a series of images from Alaska. And of course, this overview is just one of my several favorite shots from the cruise, right? And I can't tell you how many a very big number. And it never gets old, at least for me, right? It's something that I really enjoy. These are very impressive animals, and being able to be close enough to them that you can see them in their habitat is just incredible. So starting off just with a brief kind of overview of the trip that we took. So we started in Seattle, and I've got a handful of photos from Seattle that I'll share because we got there a day before our cruise and we decided to go wander around and check out a few things. From there, you can see kind of the line of the circuit. Tonight, I'm really only going to share images from Seattle and then two of our destinations, the first two, Sitka and Juneau. And then from there, we really had, three other interesting stops. I say three because Victoria was our last stop. We didn't get to the port until like 7 p.m. And we were just too tired to go out and mess around. So this was our path. It was a 7-day cruise, and you can see the itinerary that we had. This was on Norwegian Cruise Line. And I don't know if folks have cruised with them before or not, but it's the only one we've cruised on, and we will continue with them for sure. So starting in Seattle, really with a full day, right? We spent time walking around and taking an Uber to a couple of different places. And so I've got some photos to share of each of these areas. Folks are probably familiar with Chihuli's work. And it was definitely very interesting experience. You can't go to Seattle without, going to the Space Needle, taking pictures of the Space Needle, taking pictures from the Space Needle. So I've got a little bit of that. Pike Place Market has got a lot of activity, a lot of neat places to eat, lots of nice shops. And then Miners Landing is another place that was fun to finish the day.
I went to the public market. Yeah.
I know.
So we'll start with Chihuly because that's where we went first. And I mean, I could have easily spent all day in this place, going from piece to piece, and I can't tell you how many thousands of pieces they have in this that are very intricate, very interesting, and they have a blend of indoor fixtures that they do a very good job at keeping the lighting low, but the fixtures themselves are very well illuminated, to outdoor gardens and displays, which are just incredible. And then the image on the right, there's a passage between two of the rooms where above the ceiling, it's a glass ceiling, and they've got all of this glassware sitting on top of it that scatters the light, but it's also got interesting patterns, etc., that depending on where you stand, have some very high photogenic quality. Sculptures are a big deal in the Chihuly Glass Garden, and he's especially, or he's got one room in particular that's got a lot of sea life sculptures made of glass, and the detail in these things is just, it's mind-boggling. From squids to turtles, crabs, it's got some nautilus, and a lot of other things that I just didn't have time to capture the pictures. But it's definitely much cheaper to take the pictures of these than to think about buying any of these things, because the prices on these are absolutely astronomical. And there are some pieces that photos just do not do them justice. But it certainly gives you a a flavor for what's out there. And if any of these folks, say, hey, I'd like to see, a bigger image of that, let me know and I can pull it up real quick from the raw and let folks take a closer look if there's details catching your eye. I did take a blend of wide shots and tight shots to just try to capture some of the detail. I won't say this is one of the best ones I took, but it definitely was eye-catching looking at this all white sculpture to see what was going on in it. He had a room full of these bowls, as I guess what we would call them, different color blends and again, just really striking pieces that I thought about wanting to get one to take home until I saw the price tag, and the tiny one was like $6,000, and we decided that pictures would likely be sufficient. A few more bowls that really jumped out as interesting. I'm more partial to the red stuff than the blue stuff, but that probably comes from my college allegiance and my college rival.
Like watching someone's vacation pictures.
Yeah. One of the rooms had a very large assembly, and I didn't capture the overall, or I have captured the overall shot, but I wanted to just share some of the details that they have. This particular ball, stuck in with all the red glassware around it was very interesting. Found it difficult to manage depth of field in some of these because the lighting was so dark and I really couldn't tell in the camera how effectively it had been captured. So that just means that at some point I have to go back and try again, which I don't see as a bad thing. This is on the left is a larger view of a different portion of this previous image. That image, that black ball is somewhere back behind this on the right somewhere. And likewise, the boat full of all of this glassware. Just lots of different angles to appreciate the artistry from. So I probably have 500 more shots from Chihuly, but Chihuly wasn't really the main topic of tonight's presentation. So I'll just kind of leave those as teasers for more to come. We actually ended up going there twice. Once the day before the cruise, and then after the cruise was over, we disembarked at about 9 in the morning, and we actually went back and spent a few more hours at Chihuly taking more pictures and just enjoying the artwork. And unfortunately, right beside the Chihuly art glass is the Space Needle. I'm sure you've seen images of this before. It's a very interesting structure. It's a very long line to get in it. It's not terribly cheap to get in it, but definitely worth the time. Probably in the next presentation deck I put together, I'll have a few more slides of the Space Needle itself, but I figured I'd share more about Pike Place Market. Don't know why it didn't dawn on me to enter this image in this week's or in this month's contest. I guess I forgot about it since I got so caught up in another subject. But seeing them throw the fish, I spent quite a bit of time here trying to catch, an image, and it's really hard to try to catch the fish and make the fish still in the air during the motion. It's moving too fast, and the focus point's moving too fast. Lighting is not terribly great, so I never quite mastered it. But it was definitely entertaining. While you're there, of course, you could see it's a market, so you could buy any of the fish that they had. And, I'm a big fan of crabs and lobster. We didn't buy any of this stuff, but sure thought about it. The monkfish on the right was a display they had, which they used to to get jump scares on people, because they under the ice they have it attached to a string, and every now and then somebody's walking by looking up close to it, the guy behind the counter will pull the string or the rope, and this thing will slide up or slide down, and really grab your attention. So definitely worth, spending an hour or more walking around to see the sights, to see the shops, maybe spend a little bit of money, and even get a bite to eat. There's a couple of interesting sculptures that aren't glass in the area. And I think, being in the Northwest, right, Bigfoot is part of the local lore. So they have a couple of these. And of course, I'm guessing there have been pranks in the past, because they've got him latched to the wall and they've got straps on his feet so he doesn't start wandering on his own. Some local artists take to painting the walls. These are just two that I captured on the left, that I thought were interesting. These were side by side. There was a kind of an alley with a stairwell that took you past all of this stuff. And then of course, right behind you was the Seattle Ferris wheel right on the pier that we went to for dinner, and we saw some other interesting objects and places. Didn't end up going into this place, but they know that eagles are common in the area, so this was kind of a hint of things to come. And the totem poles, obviously, kind of talking or speaking to the natives in the area. But we were hungry, so we didn't go inside. As we were waiting for dinner, we did get a chance to capture this guy just kind of hanging around out on a post at the pier as we're going into our dinner. And that's kind of how we wrapped up our night in Seattle. So next morning, we got on board this vessel, the Norwegian Bliss, and this was the way we were going to get to experience the nature and beauty of Alaska. Just a couple images I took inside the ship. I took several, but obviously on a cruise ship, there's quite a bit of luxury, right? So several hot tubs and private sunning areas. We spent a lot of time in this upper right-hand corner observation deck, where you have almost a panoramic view of the fore of the ship, right? So where you're going. And there's a bar not far from here, so if you get thirsty, they have countless ways of meeting your needs. Not far from this observation deck, about 50 feet away, right behind us, is this shallow pool and relaxation area, which was also a nice feature to have when you're ready to take a break from the day and you didn't want to be amongst, thousands of people. And then I took a picture of our roomed entryway. We decided to go big and enjoy the spa as a part of our adventure. Got a photo of the Space Needle as we were sitting on top and waiting for passengers to board, so that we could embark. I think we got on the ship at around 10 in the morning, and they weren't going to pull out until like 5 p.m. So we had quite a bit of time to kill, which probably led to too much eating and drinking in the meantime, but nonetheless, we had a good time. Number of boats and ships passed us by, and this is one of the better images I captured of, people looking at us having a good time and knowing that we were about to have a great time on our voyage. So now I'll fast forward to our first port of call, which is Sitka, Alaska. This was a port where we decided to take an excursion that I believe was like a photo safari with wildlife. And so you're going to see that theme popping up time and time again in this set. It's a very photogenic area. The only downside, if you consider a downside, is it was definitely cloudy and rainy through most of our adventure in this town. Even on our photo cruise, it was rainy throughout the entire duration. The good news is I brought the right rain protection gear to keep my camera covered, to keep me covered. And it paid dividends. And so it's something that next time I go, I'll definitely bring to make sure that that continue to be prepared so I can capture images when they present themselves, because you never know when it's gonna be time to take a shot. So when we first pulled into port, this is two images. On the left, there was this old lighthouse nestled in amongst the trees. That it just looked interesting. And so I had to capture that image. And then on the right was the very first eagle that we saw on our adventure. He was he was not far from this lighthouse, about 100 yards on a little extension of this peninsula out into the water. And he was just hanging out, having a good time. He'd probably seen that cruise ship hundreds of times, right? So it wasn't bothering him at all. When we first got to the downtown area, there was this guy kind of hanging out in the water, tracking down some fish. And we spent some time walking around. We actually left the ship, took a shuttle to the city of Sitka, because we had about 2 or 3 hours to kill before our excursion departed. And so we used that time to go check out the local area, do some shopping, nibble on some food, and really get ourselves ready for what we were expecting to be a lot of fun. Around the visitor center that they had a lot of these little pine trees that had these little pine cones on them that had this bird kind of lip that I thought was really cool. And I probably took 30 pictures of these things because I just couldn't leave them alone. On the streets of Sitka, there were a number of places where folks were performing, their music that they'd been up from their upbringing. So these two guys were just kind of hanging out, making beautiful noise, beautiful sounds. And so we stopped and listened for a little bit. I had to capture a picture. Right across the street from them was this church. And of course, hanging out of the church, we had two birds, right? One was another one of these, I guess that's a raven. But then up on the steeple, we had this eagle that was just kind of hanging out. And he was there for, I think, the entire time we were walking around the town, just looking around, making different poses, generally unfazed by the throngs of people walking the streets. I wish the sky would have been, clearer, but my understanding is in Alaska, this is probably the best you're going to get on any given day. We did find another group of musicians, maybe 50 yards away, having a great time, again, singing some great music. And it helped us pass the time, before we got on our cruise, on our ship to go check out the waters around Sitka. I didn't capture a photo of the boat because it was too quick of a boarding. And so I'll move into some more of the photos I took while we were on that excursion. Eagles were all of a sudden in abundance. They took us to a couple of different spots where these guys were just hanging out in trees. And these are just a handful of the photos that I captured as we were going. At the time, my camera gear was my D850, the 200 to 500 lens. I also brought with me my 28 to 300. I brought my 105 macro. I brought my 12 to 24. And what I'll say is 90 to 95% of my shots were taken with the 200 to 500. And having, these opportunities here present themselves, that was when I was convinced that I really needed to find a way to get my hands on the Nikon Z with the 100 to 400 that you could put a 2x teleconverter on to effectively have an 800 millimeter lens. And so I have since made that happen. And so now I need to go back and track these guys down and get even closer shots of them. A little bit farther on our journey, we found a place that was just covered with otters swimming around in this kelp. And they were just as curious about us as we were about them. So they definitely gave us a lot of really neat expressions, and they put on quite the show for us. Not far away, there was a rock structure covered with cormorants, and they seemed to pay us no mind at all. A few more curious otters kind of keeping an eye on us as we were sailing past to check out these guys. And ultimately, this quest was about going to find whales. And we did find some a little bit later, and we'll see those photos in just a moment. Shortly after we left this otter collective, it began to rain, and rain and rain and rain. And I was the only guy standing on the back of the ship with my camera taking pictures in the rain. And so this is a different shot of an image that you guys have seen before of this fishing boat that was moving past us in the rain. And that's why this is so cloudy, is because it was just a downpour. The first glimpse we got of a whale, he was actually pretty close by. So I was able to capture this as he exhaled his breath and was getting ready to take a deep breath in. We actually managed to follow about 4 or 5 humpbacks around this bay for about an hour. And I spent an hour, I probably rattled off, I don't know, 400 shots in an hour of tail moving through, coming out of the surface and then going back into the water. End up with probably 75% of those shots are not terribly usable, but several of them are definitely shots that I appreciate. And you can definitely see, a couple of different whales here just based on the patterns in their tails and stuff dangling off their tails. After we followed humpbacks for a while, we changed course and started heading kind of back towards our origin point whenever we ran into these guys. And these are orcas. And they're very playful, and they're very curious, and they're very beautiful. So this ship was actually quite close to them, and they were putting on a show. I didn't see any of them breach, but definitely saw them, much closer. This is where he came by to say hi. He was probably 60 yards or so from our ship when I took this photo. And this is actually cropped in of a much wider field of view. The two of them came by, and I managed to get a shot of this guy breaching, or not breaching, but breaking the surface and blowing out his breath. And I thought I was fairly lucky. After a few more minutes, these guys swam away, and we headed back to port. That concluded our day in Sitka, and we ate and drank and made our way to our next port, which was Juneau. And so in Juneau, once we got off of the ship, we were in a small port that had this large anchor that I thought was kind of cool looking, especially the colors here versus the green backdrop. And we were up here in July, right? So everything was in its full colors for summer, and it was lovely. One of the first things we noticed was the cell phone tower, which was right behind this anchor, had a couple of eagles just, again, seeing the cruise ship again come into their port and not really caring that we were there. But they was just, I think they're just beautiful creatures, and I loved seeing them every time they cropped up. So we headed to our next sightseeing cruise, another ship taking us out to go chase more wildlife. Again, didn't have time to take pictures of that, and also missed getting pictures of the harbor seals that were there, unfortunately. So I have to go back. But we did see this kind of cool looking ship that would have probably been a lot of fun if we'd had a chance to book an excursion on this guy. But obviously we didn't know about it before we left. So now I'll have to check it out next time I go. I'm guessing it goes a little bit faster than the ship we were on, or the boat we were on for a tour. On this one, we also had close encounters with humpbacks, and this is probably the closest shot I got of a humpback where you could actually see the face. And I'm not quite sure what it had going on with its mouth, but it definitely had something man-made here, I believe. I'm not sure if you'd caught a rope or what was going on, but I really didn't notice it until after I got home and was looking at my photos. Now, I suppose this could be a strand of kelp, but I really don't know. Sea lions were on top of every buoy that we went past, and the boat drivers made a point to take you past the buoys to be able to see the sea lions. And it's probably the best image I got of them, just sleeping and not having a care in the world. And like I said, these guys were everywhere. After we did our wildlife kind of seeing, I did have more whale pictures, but I wanted to move on to our hike. So we left the boat and we hiked on the trails to take us to the Mendenhall Glacier. And so that became a bit of a different world, right? So very lush rainforest, lots of just interesting details all around you if you took a minute to stop and look around, right, between the moss and the fungus, and even just the trees themselves. And so just a beautiful area. We loved it. This is a map of the trail that we hiked. We ended up going, let's see where it says you are here. I think we walked up and around over this stream and then back all the way through to see the glacier. So it was about an hour. This says 2.5 hours, but I don't think we hit the whole thing because we definitely weren't there for 3 hours. Along this walk, just so many flowers and trees and moss-covered things to take a look at that we just thoroughly enjoyed. I'll get it later. And bottom center is a different view of the tree on the bottom left. I'm hoping folks can see well enough these images, or I have several on the page. If not, I'll revise this later and send out bigger images. But it was something that I wanted to try. This is the what we call the worm's eye view image of this tree, and I thought it was pretty striking once I captured it. So wanted to share that with other folks. Off to the right, this is another image of that same tree, just not quite as vertical to capture some of the details on the nearer the base of the tree. As we continued our hike, right, there were all kinds of, again, moss, lichen, plants that just were interesting, as well as this this waterfall that we passed over a small bridge and we could see this. So I felt like it was a good idea to spend 15 minutes taking a number of images here, both, high shutter speed to stop the motion, and then slow shutter speed to get you this motion blur. Of course, the quest here was to ultimately get to the glacier, and it was quite the walk because over time the glaciers recede. So they had all these markers that indicated, where the end of the glacier was at these different points in time, and it was a good, I don't know, half mile to mile from this first marker to actually get to the glacier itself, because it's receded that much. But the end of our quest was richly rewarded by being able to see this glacier, as it's slowly flowing, back into the ocean. And that's where I ran out of time of compiling my photos. That was probably about 100 photos I just went through, and it took me, I don't know, 3 hours to put that together. So I've been leaving folks with this hanging glacier because I'm ultimately going to leave you hanging for more of our photos of Alaska. what I can do is I can go unscripted and pull up my my library and share a handful more, because I think we've got plenty of time. So if folks are interested, I can pivot and do that if folks want to see a few more things.
I think that's a great idea.
All
These
right.
are amazing images.
Well, I had a great time. It's hard to even let the pictures truly bring out the experience itself. And so I'll put that away, and I'll just open up my file explorer, and I've got a few folders where I've already pre-made some of the images into JPEGs, because I printed some of these. So actually, I want my pictures. So these were some of the preview photos that I put together like right after I got home from the trip. That were, again, some of the things that were great memories of Alaska. So more Chihuly art glass. This structure was incredible. I loved it. Definitely didn't want to touch it because I couldn't afford to fix it if I broke it. This is the same one that you just saw. From the top of the Space Needle, I did capture an image of, was that Mount McKinley, and somehow I managed to time it with a plane flying overhead. I'm not happy with the editing I did here. So I'm gonna go back, and since I've bought the Topaz stuff, to see if I can do something better with this in Topaz. You've already seen the pine cone. This was another part of our walk-in in Sitka, looking at just some of the vegetation that was growing. And of course, everything's wet because it was raining the entire time we were there. This is the wider version of the otters that you saw earlier. And it's an even wider of those same otters. The cormorants, this guy, more otters messing around. Just a couple of islands with breakers on them. That same ship. Whale tail you saw. Trying to find something new. It's a slightly wider image of that boat anchor. They were actually, with this image, they were able to identify this whale. I forget the name, but they had this in a catalog that they had on the ship, so everyone was excited that we could do that. Sleeping sea lions, a tripod, you know, three different whales swimming side by side, breathing and diving. Lots of whale tails. This was like my mission on this trip, was to get whale tail photos, and I got several, probably several hundred. I tried my hand at getting some of the birds in flight, and I felt this one turned out fairly well. This is actually fairly cropped in. It was a much wider field of view, so I was happy that my gear managed to preserve the detail on this guy.
Bryan?
Yes.
What was that bird?
I'd have to go, you know, look it up. I don't remember exactly what this guy is, but he's very common in Alaska.
Very cool.
Oh yeah. This is the same bug you saw in the presentation, just cropped in a little bit tighter. Here's again, I wish I'd have spent more time to try to work on depth of field, but he wasn't going to hang around for very long. I also found that I brought my tripod to the on this cruise. I never used it once. And I think it was mostly due to the nature of, with our excursions, we were always moving. And I really didn't have the time to take it off, set it up, establish a location, and frame a shot. If I did, I'd have been way behind the group. So I'm not sure that next time I go on a cruise, I would even bring my tripod. Not that there aren't opportunities to use it. It's just with the nature of that type of vacation, I just couldn't work it in, and I'm not sure I could in the future. And I also don't know that I'd bring all the lenses that I brought, because, like I said, 95% of my shots came with one lens. I think I took a few wide angles, and that was about it. This is that same moss-covered tree. So a lot of these that you've already seen. Yeah, this is just a different perspective on that same waterfall. In this case, I did not use the tripod, but on the bridge going over, there was a handrail, and I was able to get the camera on the handrail and hold it steady enough that the shot actually worked out fairly well. This is the same Mendenhall Glacier shot you saw before. This is a wider angle of that whole panorama. And here again, the photo doesn't do the vista justice, just because of the lush forest around you, the waterfall off to the right behind the trees, these icebergs that are out in the water. Just so much incredible scenery. We just couldn't, catch our breath for all of the neat things we see. And of course, this guy over here on his kayak going out to check out icebergs and glacier was really neat. A few more of the calves off of that glacier were slowly meandering down the path heading off to the ocean. Several waterfalls. This was actually, I believe, from not Juneau, but Icy Strait Point. Our next stop. No, that's not right. I think these were still in Juneau. I just didn't add them to the presentation. This is the Hanging Glacier. This was what we saw at the beginning of our evening voyage down the Endicott Arm to Dawes Glacier. And that was about a 3-hour journey, where around every corner was a new waterfall or something new to see, new icebergs. And I just spent that entire time running from side of the ship to side of the ship, taking pictures. It was freezing cold, but it was glorious. This is just the right-hand side of that glacier with these waterfalls streaming down the side of the mountain. Another set of waterfalls slightly downstream from this. I loved all these waterfalls, and I just had to take pictures of them. Now, this is one of my favorite images because I managed to capture this little bitty baby berg kind of lining up with the meandering pattern of this waterfall coming down these hills. And this was when I actually saw this shot coming when this iceberg was, maybe 500 yards away. So I decided to come over here and park, and I just continued taking images until this is passed, right? So I've probably got about a dozen of these just to see how it looked with this in different spots in the frame. And this is the one that I liked the best, just because of how it matched this zigzag pattern. I want to say Ketchikan is where I got this image, and I've got several other starfish. These things are all over the beach, and they were just beautiful. Lots of different colors, and they were, of course, arranged in different positions. And it was very, very rainy out in this day. You can see the rocks were all wet. A couple of these guys had started climbing up the posts on the piers. I wasn't quite sure if this guy was still alive or not. Definitely didn't touch anything. Tried my hand at trying to stop water flowing over starfish. And I even did, multiple, rapid fire images, but I really couldn't quite get anything that I really, really liked. But nonetheless, it's something that definitely worth trying again. Yeah, icy straight point. I just lined this up trying to match the slope of the building with the ridge behind it. Just playing around with my camera. Now, of course, this image you guys have already seen. Saw this kind of happening, or saw this coming before it happened. This whale, right after I had taken this image, I was standing on a pier, and as I was looking down the pier, I actually saw the whale in the harbor. You know, saw his tail come up, saw him swimming, and I saw him heading in the direction over towards where the kayakers were. So I was like, all right, I've got about 30 seconds to get myself to a spot to see what happens when the whale and the kayakers come together. And I've got a handful of other images around this moment in time, but this is my favorite simply because you've got this group of kayakers, and right behind them, you've got the fluke, right, coming up. So they're probably, I don't know, 20 yards away from it. So I would say that these guys got their money's worth on their kayak excursion that morning. I'm not sure I would have been as calm as some of these folks were, because that was a massive whale, right? You can see that the width of that tail spans, 3-4 kayaks, right? So it's probably 15 feet, 20 feet wide for the tail. That's an absolutely massive beast. Definitely his domain, or her domain. I don't know which it was. Another eagle just kind of hanging out in the trees. Got this guy as we were on, in that same general area. This was one of a burst of about 6 or 7 shots as he was flying by. I learned it's very hard with, a 500mm camera to keep your subject somewhat in the frame and get, a good image of him and keep it crisp, etc. You've seen my background a few times. This was one that the guys on the boat decided to start throwing chunks of salmon in the water, and the eagles were all too happy to go retrieve it right in front of you. This is that same guy flying around, waiting for us to throw some more fish into the water. I cropped in, and it looked like it was okay. I've still got some more noise in this than I would care about, but I could probably go fix that with some software. This was another image I got of him as he was kind of flying away, banking after that. And here again, I love the lighting in this. I would have been happier if the sky was blue instead of white, but it's still all in all an image that I'm pretty happy with. And these guys are everywhere. So that was that set. Some more images I took. Of course, you saw this boat from the beginning of our voyage. This was a picture of the chandelier in the center of the ship. I took probably 40 or 50 photos from all kinds of different angles. This one was kind of interesting and a bit unusual versus what you may see, normally of the ship's chandelier. This is a different angle of that same chandelier, and of course it was illuminated with LEDs. It would change colors about every 30 seconds, and it would be a kind of a gradual wave change color combos on this thing. And I would absolutely go back on this ship again for many reasons. Another kind of tight in shot on that chandelier. Same thing. Right beside the chandelier was a gelato place. I'm a big fan of chocolate gelato, and so we went here more than once to partake. I don't know if any of you guys like mojitos. I don't know if any of you drink, but this became one of my favorite places on the ship as well. They had it was a pineapple coconut mojito that I just couldn't get enough of. And so ended up going back on more than one occasion. This is the lighthouse I shared earlier. Before we got off the ship, right, I saw this, combination of a tugboat, little pontoon boat to take folks out on a tour, and a pontoon plane. Lots of different ways to go see Alaska or to get into the harbor. A couple of eagles kind of hanging out. This was at our first stop, and it was hard to get a really good picture of them because they were just too far away from my 500 millimeter to do justice for them. This was the port itself that we had stopped in, walking around, trying to experiment with some different techniques. You saw this image earlier. Saw this guy earlier, just at a different angle. He was definitely nibbling on some stuff, crawling around in all this seaweed. I took about a dozen pictures of this guy going fishing. Of course, you've seen a couple of these pine cones already. Just vegetation in the rain. I loved the texture. I wish I could have gotten better depth of field, and so something I'll play with next time. You saw these guys. You saw this guy. Saw these folks. Saw this dude. Those. A little bit closer on that. This guy was a little bit too far away to get a really good image of, but I had to give it a try. More whale tails. You saw this. This was just me trying to capture texture and colors in the trees as we were going by, because in real time, this was just absolutely gorgeous scenery. The thrill seeker. I really want to get on that ship. You saw this guy, humpback, getting ready to dive. Another one of these birds. Another tail. Museum of Pop Culture, right? So at the end of our trip, we went back to Seattle, and you saw a heavily edited version of this last month. I think I pulled this up at the end of the meeting as well. But that building has so much interesting architecture that I just couldn't leave it alone. Yep, MoPop, the Museum of Pop Culture. I actually didn't go inside, didn't have time, but we definitely enjoyed our experience there. And I could have easily found, many more angles to view that place from. Back inside Chihuly, on our second version, right there were a couple of walls of tapestries that I thought were really interesting colors and patterns. They looked a little bit out of place in a glass place, but nonetheless, they were beautiful. This is a tighter in shot of that big blue structure. And here you can see he's got starfish and nautilus and lots of other sea creatures built into this thing. I can't imagine the time it goes into designing this, let alone making it. It's another set of the sculptures from that same room with the black ball. These are often on, mirror top tables, so you can see the reflection underneath of the art on top, which was just a lot of fun to look at. Several intricate 3D designs, right, where they've even got texture in small places on these things. Just incredible to look at. And some of the obscure colors and patterns and some of this artwork is just, you just get lost in it. I love his stuff. And so you saw the black ball. Saw the boat. I can't imagine what they went through just getting this set up, right? Because dropping any one of these pieces would have been an absolute nightmare. And I don't know what they had to do to get everything secured, especially these long cylindrical ones, right? That go up. And I wasn't about to go up close to investigate. Could have an up close shot of one of the bowls. Me thinking about maybe making a Windows background out of this. I don't know. Same thing here, an up close of the bowl. So that was the second set. And then a few other. This was a fun one. So this was an image that I captured in the Chihuly Gardens outside of one of those glass balls, but I was able to get the reflection of the Space Needle in it as well. And I guess even a reflection of the photographer is in it, if you look close enough. Or sea lions. I could keep going for hours, right? I took 3,000 photos while I was there. Not all of them are great, but the time I really enjoyed all of it, and it was a lot of fun. Another waterfall. So yeah, that's part of our Alaska trip.